Warriors, this is the Spartan Underground. And now, your host, James 300 Foster.
What's up, friends? It's Leap Day, February 29th, 2016, coming to you today with episode 6 of the Spartan Underground podcast. This episode and every episode of the Spartan Underground is brought to you by our official sponsor, our first sponsor, and our forever sponsor, Show You Roll, manufacturers of simply the best jiu-jitsu uniforms in the world, along with a lot of awesome apparel as well. And the best part about it is the people behind the brand are every bit as awesome or more awesome than the products they put out. Always doing a lot of great things. I'm sure you heard about that in my podcast with the owner of Show You Roll. So you can get on their newsletter sign up on showyouroll.com so you can keep track of when any new products are coming out. People are always asking how they can score a Show You Roll gi. The best thing to do is get on there and sign up for that newsletter so you make sure you get the announcements when they're coming out. On today's podcast, I have Tom Nguyen. He's a professional comic book artist, done work for DC, Marvel, work for TV, all sorts of very cool stuff. He's also an awesome photographer, just all around great guy and super talented. So as a comic book art fan and a wannabe comic book artist myself, I had an awesome time talking to him. I learned a ton of stuff, and I hope you guys enjoy the interview. All right, guys, here we go. Hey everyone, I'm here with Tom Nguyen, professional comic book artist. He's done work for DC and all sorts of great companies. How you doing tonight, Tom?
Good. How are you, James? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing good. Did I butcher your name?
No, you did just fine.
Good. Well, I've been really excited to have you on. A lot of my people know I'm a big nerd, both literally and physically. Obviously, people know me with my jiu-jitsu, but I've always been huge into comics and artwork, and been a big fan of yours, follower of yours for quite a long time now. So, hey, why don't you give everybody a little background of how you got started in the comic book industry and what you're working on nowadays?
Well, first of all, you must be very popular with your younger students.
Yeah,
it must be cool to have a teacher like you who's like into comic books.
Yeah, they all dig it. Definitely.
I was taking Taekwondo when I was 12 years old. All my teachers were like squares. So.
Yeah, they like it, and plus I'm big, so they're all kind of looking at me like I'm the Hulk or something. They already think I'm a kind of a superhero to them, I guess. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, somebody that they can kind of like trust and look up to, and that's always nice.
For sure.
But getting back to your question, basically how I broke in was that I met Doug Mankey, superstar penciler for DC. A lot of comic book fans will know of his work.
Right.
I met him when I was 15 years old. Long story short there was that my art teacher from elementary school introduced me to him. And the reason why she knew him was because she was his teacher when he was young.
Oh, wow. So one of those whole, it's a small world type of things.
Right. And at the time, he was working on The Mask for Dark Horse. And he hadn't done any DC work at that point yet. So, I've always been into artwork and drawing ever since I was, as long as I can remember. So she recognized my passion for it and my talent and decided to introduce me to Doug, her other former student. So, he critiqued my work and he basically mentored me in my really formative teen years. So, I was lucky enough to to meet him and became friends with him, and you know, got to know him. So he would just critique my work. Just the first time he just tore it apart. I mean, he wasn't mean about it, but he was very honest. It was the first time I was exposed to any type of professional comic book artist, and I really needed that at that time, was someone to really be honest with me and tell me what I needed to work on, and I did. I listened to him, and uh, long story short, I tell everyone he basically taught me just about everything I know about how to draw comics.
Now, were you interested from the beginning in comics specifically, or were you just kind of messing around with all different kinds of art, and that's just the direction you ended up in, or was comics something that were close to your heart from the beginning?
That's a good question. At that point, at age 15, comics was all I wanted to do. Before that, though, I messed around with everything from just simple like cartoon strips to comic books to realistic stuff like portraits, just everything. Just really trying to experiment with art and see what I liked and see what I didn't like. At one point I remember, even when I was 12, 13 years old, I was really heavily into baseball, and I collected baseball cards.
Oh
And
man,
and
I collected baseball cards too.
oh yeah. So
Yeah.
I remember at that time, uh, it was 1989. I think Upper Deck came out with their trading cards. So we were collecting what Tops and Donruss
Yep. Yep.
there. So Upper Deck came out, and then I noticed that they had a portion, like a special subset of their cards would be painted cards, like portraits of some of the baseball all stars.
Yeah, I remember
And
those.
I remember being so fascinated by it. And then I remember that's what I wanted to be. Well, I wanted to be many things. When you're a kid, you want to be so many different things, and you don't really have a solid idea of where your life was heading. So I remember
Exactly.
I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player by day, and then by night I wanted to be like a portrait artist for Upper Deck, and then like anywhere in between I would try to become a pro like BMX racer or freestyler on a bike,
There you go.
and also do like rap music on the side. I want to be a rapper at one point. Believe it.
That's
I wanted to
awesome.
do four things. um, Ironically enough, later in life, I mean, I'm doing work for Upper Deck, not in baseball stuff, but for their Marvel, license, gaming cards. But getting back to how I broke in, uh, Doug was a good enough connection to when he started to do his first regular DC work called Major Bummer. He had done stuff for DC before, but this is his first like regular series they offered him. It was written by John Arcudi. It was like a slapstick superhero kind of a comedy superhero series that it didn't sell too well, but it has kind of a cult following. It
Yeah,
lasted
it's kind of
15
a kind
years.
of one of the things that got him on the map as far as getting noticed with his artwork, wasn't it?
He was. I think he was getting noticed with the Mask, and then he did Mask Lobo crossover before Major Bummer.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Major Bummer. We did get featured in Wizard magazine, if you remember that,
Mm-hmm.
and so I guess you could say it got more attention anyway.
Right.
And at the time, he and I guess DC was looking for an inker for him, and I remember being 18, 19 years old. And I remember one time Doug came to my dorm actually while I was in college, just to, just to visit and look at my stuff and then grab dinner or something like that. And then I remember saying, "Oh, Doug, I can ink you. I should ink you just for fun."
Right.
Even though I never really wanted to be an inker. I just wanted to be a penciler. But at that time, he wasn't inking himself. Other people were inking him, and I, just being a young, cocky, teenager with a big mouth. I said, "Oh, dude, I can ink you. I can ink you better than these guys."
Right.
And then his exact words were, "Well, you think you can do it?" And then I said, "Yeah." So, he gave me some Xeroxes of some of his pencils, and I would practice. And the one thing that I should mention is when I first met him when I was 15, I didn't know anything about, drawing comics as far as what tools to use, what size paper, and all that stuff.
Yeah, the
So,
process and
yeah,
everything.
right. So when he showed me his originals for the mask, I was just totally blown away. I mean, it looks so different holding an original in front of you as opposed to looking at it in a comic book.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and for the listeners, because a lot of people listening may not be necessarily into comics enough to know the process. You guys usually start with the artwork a lot bigger than what we see it in the comics. It gets reduced down, so
right, and I
you're
didn't know that either.
yeah, so you were probably looking at this big blown up page compared to what you were thinking it was going to be.
Yeah, so because I was drawing smaller, I was drawing around comic book size because that's what I thought. I thought that everyone drew it at that size.
Right.
So when he showed me, 11 by 17s, I was just blown away. All this intricate detail that you really didn't notice on a smaller printed comic book. And then, I looked at it and I was showing him my stuff that not only was it small, but I was inking with like ballpoint pens and all this,
Right,
felt
right.
tip markers, and he said, "Well, we ink with a brush," and he showed me and I'm like, "What?" I was like blown away. You dip a brush in a bottle of ink and it just didn't occur to me, at the time that he did everything back then with a brush. And then my art teacher, her name was Pat Wolf. May she rest in peace. She, went to the cabinet of the. We met in her classroom on a weekend at school, so it was a nice place to meet, and we. She didn't have any students or anything, and she went to her cabinet in the classroom. She grabbed a bunch of brand new brushes that she ordered just for her students, and she gave me one. She said, "Hey, why don't you try? Why don't you take this with you? Take a couple brushes and just practice with it."
Wow, that's really cool of her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
not a lot of teachers would do that.
yeah, yeah, she was wonderful. I mean, she was one of the few teachers in art that really encouraged me to do. Because most art teachers they just kind of poo poo the comic and the cartoony stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I've had my share of that, and they just want you to, do their still lives or their, old school. I mean, little did they know how popular comic books would become
Yeah,
as, a,
totally.
as an art form and also as a literary teaching tool, like in English classes nowadays. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy how far it's come, and it's really cool that she recognized that and encouraged you to kind of follow your passion with that. I think that's what separates a good teacher from a great teacher, right there.
Right, right. So let's see, going back, 19 years old, and then Doug was about to do this book called Major Bummer, and he encouraged me to just give it a shot, and he's like, well, it's at least getting your foot in the door. If I got the gig, then I became a pro. I remember doing it or starting on it because back then we'd take because there was 7 other professionals that were going for the job, and I was the only non-professional. And from what I heard, they all got paid to try out, and I didn't. Of course.
Oh yeah.
So I got a Xerox photocopy, and we took. What did we take? It was vellum, which is kind of like a tracing paper that you put on top of it,
Yeah.
and then you just ink on it, and then I would submit that. I remember, geez, what was it? Maybe halfway through the process, I just threw in the towel. I said, I don't want to do it anymore. And I remember Doug actually just kind of talked me back into it. So then I, did it, and I guess editorial and Doug just kind of narrowed it down to two inkers, and I was one of them, surprisingly. And then at that point, I ultimately got the job. So it was, that's how I basically broke in. And I think part of why I was selected was because, after answering a bunch of questions from Doug just to make sure that I was dedicated enough to do this, he kind of saw that not only was I motivated and eager and hungry to do the gig, but I was young. And being young, I was really into the trends, like what was cool, what looked cool in comic books, what was a hot style and stuff. And it would be a good compliment to him, a good balance, a good second set of eyes, in other words.
Yeah, yeah, and you're not coming in with a lot of preconceived notions or opinions that maybe someone who had been doing it a little bit longer than you
Right,
would have, or someone maybe who was a little older, a little more experienced.
right. Because at that time, uh, it was still, geez, it was 1990, late 1996, because this would be later this year will be my 20th year doing it when
Wow,
I
so
got the job.
you've been inking as long as almost as long as I've been doing jujitsu now. That's really cool.
Oh, awesome. How old
Yeah,
are you?
I'll be 39 this year.
Oh, yeah. So we're about the same age. I'm 39 now.
There you go.
And um, at the time, being 1996, I mean, it was still hot off the heels of, the whole image revolution and the whole, art styles being hot, artists being the rock stars. So the comics industry and comic fandom at the time was very, very much aware and paid attention to, what looks cool, what looks hot. And I was right in that age bracket. So it kind of, I think he saw some value in having me be, on the art team. So I wasn't outdated and old school, in other words.
Right.
And that was something I was very aware of, looking at artists at the time and really being into comic books was what looks cool and what looks old school. So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And definitely during that time, there was a real evolution in the style of how comics were looking artwork wise, and a lot more importance was put on the artwork than I think was in the past. So
yep, I
you were
agree.
you were definitely right in that time period where everything was kind of shifting over to that new style and that new focus on the art teams and everything.
Yeah. So I guess one of my jobs was just to make sure that Doug didn't look, so outdated and lost in that shuffle.
Right.
Um,
And for people listening who may not be familiar with the terms, could you explain a little bit what an inker does? Because I know people joke about tracing and all of that. You know, people have seen the movie Mallrats where they say, "Oh, the inker's the tracer" and everything.
yeah.
There's so much more that goes into it than just copying what the penciler is putting down with his lines. So could you explain that process a little bit?
Yeah. Well, depending on the penciler, I mean, it can almost be like tracing. Some pencilers are so very, very tight with their pencils, but more off. I mean, usually it's not like that at all. But yeah, basically, the penciler just kind of draws it in pencil, but it's not super, super tight. And then the inker takes it and then polishes it up, refines it, adds detail where needed, makes sure that the shadows are in the right places, and adds texture. But the most simplistic way that I've heard it explained to me that I always like to say is basically what the inker does is takes the penciler's work and redraws it, but does it in ink
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
makes it presentable and clean enough for print and everything. And
right, and a lot of people don't realize that it's definitely valuable. You need to know how to draw as well in order to be a good inker. I think all the really good inkers that I see also have a lot of artistic ability themselves, so they understand anatomy and line weights and all of these different things that you know makes it a little less simple than just going in there and copying what the artist is doing. You can go in and refine everything and really make the original artwork pop.
Right, because if you don't, if you're not that knowledgeable in art and you come across something in the pencils that you don't understand, you're going to interpret it wrong, and it's going to come out looking even worse than what you originally did not understand looking at it.
Right. Yeah.
So you only amplify the problem if you can't solve the problem.
Yeah, and I would assume that would be a little more prevalent if the artist you were working with is giving you really loose artwork to work with too, right?
Correct. So it's it's kind of an interesting game of trying to match a penciler and inker team that works, because you'll see penciler and inker teams that only work together once or twice and just they don't meld, and other ones that you kind of associate with being together all the time as a team, why they flourish and work together for years and years. So
Yeah, and you've been working with Doug now pretty much your whole career, right?
yeah, well, not well. The last few years, I've kind of bounced around and been on my own and worked with other pencilers. But he was, yeah. I mean, he and I was we were a team for the majority of my career. Yes, so it was very formative to our look. And then I kind of branched off and did some of my own stuff. And then now he's had other inkers over him. But I think our names will always be linked in history as a team that people will remember.
Yeah, definitely. And you're kind of, speaking of branching out, you've done a lot of really cool stuff over the past several years. One of my favorite things that you've done, with me being kind of a hobbyist artist, I really love your Art Samurai lessons, your online courses that you did there for a while. Are you continuing to do that? Do you plan on putting more of those out?
Yeah, we actually, it's been on hiatus for the last year. And it started off because I got really busy with and bogged down with deadlines, and my traveling schedule was to the point where I couldn't properly dedicate to it. I mean, the websites are still active. The Facebook page obviously is still active. We still try to throw up helpful tips and articles and links. Um, but right now, Rob, who's the my partner and producer, who because through the classes that
Yeah.
you've taken. Um, I just saw him tonight. Actually, we had a dinner and we saw the horrible movie The Witch, and we did some drawing at a coffee shop. But anyway, we're trying to look for a new streaming service, because the
Yeah.
one that we were going with, they started changing up their interface, and then we lost some features that we liked, and it wasn't working out at all. And we became unhappy with it. So now we're looking for another service that's reliable, so then we can start it up again. We are going to do it this year, definitely. We're going to reboot it, but no, it's not dead. In case people are wondering, but thank you.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that because that's something I really enjoyed, and definitely just what few lessons I did on there really helped take my art to the next level. So
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah, I mean, we love doing it, and we can't wait to be back online. But trust me, you're not the only one. We have so many people asking when you guys can be back, but we'll be back.
very cool. Do you find that I found in jiu-jitsu when I started teaching more, it actually made me better at my craft. Do you find something similar with artwork? Do you find that when you teach it kind of sharpens your skills because for jiu-jitsu it's like if I'm telling them to do something this way and then I look at what I'm doing and I'm not following that same principle, it kind of helped to keep me honest a little bit with my art. Do you find there's anything similar like that with your trade?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's almost exactly what you said. It keeps me, like you said, it keeps me honest. Because I like to practice what I preach, but a lot of the things I teach, it almost forces me to, in a way, depending on the lesson, go back to basics. Because sometimes you just have to fall back to basics. When something's not quite working or you're in a funk, you just got to go back to basics. And it's never bad to revisit principles and things just to keep it, fresh. So yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because it's the same way with jiu-jitsu. We talk a lot about the fundamentals and always coming back to your fundamentals no matter how advanced you become or how long you've been training. So I always find it really interesting the parallels between different trades. It seems like there's a lot of people in jiu-jitsu or martial arts that are also into producing some form of art, whether it be comic book art or painting or even music. So I wonder if there's something in our brains that kind of attracts us to those same type of things.
This topic comes up every now and then. I do believe that there is a correlation um, amongst all creatives, that common thread or denominator, and I think it's just wanting to create, and it's an art because jujitsu is an art, creating music is an art, acting is an art, sculpting, painting, drawing, writing. Um, it's a way to express something, and just let the it's that, and it's maybe an innate desire to problem solve, because
Yeah, that
sometimes
could
the
be.
way I look at art when I'm drawing is I'm just solving a bunch of questions on paper, a bunch of I'm trying to solve, like, where to put lines. It's almost like a game or a puzzle, but jujitsu is exactly like that.
Oh, definitely.
So, oh, speaking of, did you watch the Anderson Silva and Michael Bisping fight?
I saw some clips of it.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it was really weird. Yeah, it was really weird. I'd really be interested to see how well Anderson would perform if he would kind of, not goof around as much. Like if he was really taking it serious the whole time, I think he would just be putting guys away left and right. But I
Yeah,
think
did he get chewed out like years ago by Dana White
yeah,
for doing that?
he did, and I would have thought kind of, that's how Weidman knocked him out in their first match, was he was kind of showboating and playing around, and that's when he got knocked out. So you would have thought he would have kind of learned, but now, I guess
He's
there
such a
was,
talented fighter that when he
yeah,
does that stuff and I see him get knocked out, I mean, I just love it because I'm like, dude, you totally deserve it.
yeah. I'm in the same boat with you on that. I guess there was a lot of controversy with the. I didn't see the full fight, but I guess he kind of knocked Bisping out, but the ref didn't stop it because it was at the bell or whatever in the third round. So
Yeah, from what I remember, because I watched it this morning on MMA Share.
yeah,
Um, I think, long story short, and part of it was kind of Bisping's fault because you don't take your eyes off your opponent.
yeah, you should
But
never stop in the middle of the fight like he did because he was trying to talk to the ref, I guess.
yeah, while the round is still live. But basically, Anderson, I guess he lost his mouthpiece in the ring or something. It flew out of his mouth or something, and Bisping was trying to do the noble thing, kind of motioned to the ref, and pointed to the mouth guard, and Anderson. I mean, it's kind of like a dicky move, but he
Right.
took advantage of that and he did a flying knee. But he connected. I think like literally like just a millisecond after the bell rang.
Right. And
So
then there was people saying that it should have been called a knockout or whatever and all of this. But
yeah,
really, I think is a lesson in not counting the chickens before the eggs have hatched. I
right.
saw Anderson kind of celebrating like he won, and then I guess it continued, and then he ended up losing the decision. So
Yeah, that was another interesting call. I
What
don't know.
about the just superstar battle that Kimbo Slice and
Oh
Dada
gosh,
5000 was?
talk about embarrassing. I mean, it was embarrassing for me to watch. I
I,
wanted to watch that fight, you know.
they kind of looked like two bears that had been hit with tranquilizer darts before they went out there, didn't they?
I thought like literally like 30 seconds into the fight, like there was a glitch and like they played the fight, the rest of it in slow motion.
Yeah, yeah, that was really sad to see.
But I mean, the Shamrock Gracie fight was almost as embarrassing, I thought.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that whole card left something to be wanted. You know, something left.
it was the most
Uh,
anticlimactic card.
it, it was, it was. What fights are you excited for coming up? I think the big one everybody's talking about's the Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz now that Conor's original opponent had to pull out because of a
Right.
broken foot, and now Nate Diaz has stepped up, and they're actually doing it at another weight class above. They're doing it all the way up at 170 now. What do you think about that one?
Is that next week or when is that fight?
Yeah, yeah, that's on the 5th. Yeah, March 5th, so next Saturday.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm rooting for. I don't know. I'm not particularly big fans of either of those guys, but if I had to pick one, I'm not a. Uh, I so detest the Diaz brothers
Right.
personally, I mean, just because I just think they're just punks, But some people really like that. I mean, that's cool. Some people really like that. Almost like trying to play like the heel and have a little bit of personality going in. I like that too to an extent, but sometimes it's like for instance Ronda Rousey. It's
Right.
she, her attitude. It seemed to have gotten to me the way I look at it over time worse to the point where really it was hard for a lot of people to like her.
Yeah, it was hard for people to relate to her, and she started getting booed more and all of these things. But she said from the beginning she was a big professional wrestling fan, so she always wanted to play like that role of the
Yeah.
heel and the bad guy. So I don't
Yeah.
know how much of it for her was an act and how much of it was real, but she definitely got humbled in her last fight.
Yeah, big slice of humble pie. You know
Yep.
what the funny thing was? And I gotta say, I never reacted and jumped like, I was rooting for Holly Holm.
Right.
And boy, I wish I bet money on her too.
I know.
But anyway, one of the most entertaining things was immediately after the fight that night. If you go on um, Rhonda's Instagram or Twitter, and you
Right.
just read the comments. Oh, it was so brutal. Like literally, like every 5 seconds, update. Like a dozen more comments every 5 seconds, and just read it, and just people just trolling her. Like
Yeah.
it almost like I almost felt bad, but
Yeah, I felt a little bad for her, but I understood, not that it makes it right. I understood why people were doing it because kind of the let's call it a character that she had portrayed all that time. It kind of, you get a lot of people hoping to see you lose. So
yeah,
when she did lose and in such a dramatic fashion, it was very much you're going to have all those people that were out against you come out and kind of throw it back in your face, I guess.
right. Do you have a winner for, or do you have someone you're rooting for next week for the
Um,
fight?
you know, I like I can appreciate the skill of both guys. I've never been a big fan of like the trash talking or being a bad guy,
Yeah.
playing the bad guy act. So, um, I did watch an interesting documentary that aired about Conor McGregor where he basically says a lot of his stuff is an act and just to hype the fights and everything.
Yeah.
And he likes getting into their head and doing the trash talking.
Yeah.
I think Conor will probably win. Um, I just think with the fight being like on 2 weeks' notice, it's just Nate's not going to be in the physical shape that he needs to be in to face someone who's had a full fight camp like Connor has.
Yeah.
And Connor's really dangerous because his mental game is so dialed in. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that's really what separates the good fighters from the great fighters, or the elite athletes in any sport. It always comes down to that mental side of things. So
Right.
he very much believes that he can go in there and do everything he says he can do, and he usually gets proven right. So
Yeah, it'll be a good fight. I think he's going to win myself.
and then the Holly Holm and Misha Tate fight should be interesting as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Holly Holm will win.
I think Holly will win, but I think Misha's style with a little more her wrestling and stuff is going to be a little more difficult for her. But I definitely think Holly's gonna come away with that one as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we really shifted gears
Yeah, I
there.
know.
See, because we're both into art and MMA, and
That's how we get along.
exactly.
No, it's weird because the podcasts that I enjoy doing the most are the ones where it doesn't really feel like a formal interview. It's just like I always consider it like just chatting with friends.
Yeah, and that's right from the beginning. That was what I wanted to be doing with my podcast, was just, hanging out with people that I like and I enjoy talking to and share common interests with and all of that. So for me, it's just an honor to be able to have you on here. It's really cool, as a comic book fan, to have one of my favorite artists on here is very cool.
That's sad. Just kidding.
You got to live up to all this hype I'm giving you, man.
No, I don't deserve it.
So you a lot of people may not know, you also do a lot of photography. You do a lot of photography stuff. Is that something for you? Is that like your hobby away from your? Because I'm assuming you love doing comics, and that's kind of like your hobby and your job. But do you kind of look at your photography stuff as kind of a side hobby away from that?
Yeah, my smut photography. Yeah, I've always enjoyed looking at great photography, even when I was a teenager.
I'll translate that. You like looking at photos of half-naked girls.
Well, yeah, I was getting there. But, oh man, the stories to tell, no.
I bet.
But, long story short, there was a period back in the early 2000s to mid 2000s where I was heavily into painting. And this is after I broke into comic books.
Right.
And not just painting, but doing like pinups, like contemporary pinup art. And I even got some attention, from that, being having some of my stuff published and also online in the airbrush forums and stuff like that. I was really into traditional airbrush.
Okay, so you've done multiple different mediums that you've worked in then.
Yeah. So, and around that time, I started to develop a little bit of a reputation for working with a lot of pageant competitors and pageant queens and stuff like that. A lot of winners, state winners, top 5 placers, and just working with these really, really beautiful, beautiful girls. And, I do paintings of them. And then through word of mouth, I would paint other models or paint their friends. And when I tried to do that more realistic style, I would just do the pictures myself, take pictures of them, various angles and poses, just as a reference, just like any other artist, would use reference. But they weren't anything but just mere snapshots. I would take various angles of their face just to make sure I got the dimensions of their face well versed in my head before I drew them, different angles of their bodies and different lighting, and not like proper photography lighting, but as an artist, you're aware of what light looks good and what light doesn't. So I would just kind of move around lamps, or I'd kind of angle their bodies, toward the window or, whatever lights were in the room. and just to get the proper lighting and just do the paintings. Now, at the time, I mean, I would spend anywhere from 3 days to 2 weeks on a painting, but let's just say average about a week per
Right.
painting. And I mean, that's fine and dandy because if you're an artist, you enjoy the process anyway, or you should, because it got to the point where I'm thinking, geez, this is like taking me forever, and I don't know how familiar you are with airbrushing, but um, we would have to put a transparent, sticky layer on the board, and
Mm-hmm.
then I would take a razor blade and cut masks and shapes of various parts of the painting. And the reason why I would do that is because we'd peel that mask off and then we'd airbrush it, because the airbrush is like a little spray paint, so it kind of sprays everywhere, and you don't want
Right.
it to go everywhere. You have to like cut masks and cover up different parts of the painting, and that was such a pain in the ass for me.
Yeah, so you're basically making yourself like a custom stencil
Oh
by
yeah. I,
cutting out the masking
oh yeah, and
masking
I
paper.
have to cut out the masking, for eyeballs, for the lips, for hair, for like their articles of clothing, for their hands, and separate their bodies from the background. If I had stuff, and it was just a big pain in the ass. So, like one of the worst things ever for an airbrush artist to do. And then mixing paints, that was always kind of tedious to me. Um, Now with Photoshop, it's so much easier because you can just use a
Yeah.
paint drop or the eye drop tool or whatever.
Yeah, digital art has changed a lot of things.
Oh boy, let me tell you, it spoiled me.
I bet.
And back when I did traditional paint, I was one of those old school guys. Speaking of old school, but not old school, but purists. I was like, oh, I'm never gonna do digital, because I was very much a traditionalist.
Right.
But when you're in the commercial art field and one of your jobs is not just to produce art, but your job is to be productive, because it is a commercial artist, to do illustrations, to make a living, to make money, you have to, you know, mass produce a lot of times. And it's just, once you see how practical it is to do digital, and then once you really get over that digital is not cheating at all, it's just a tool, then
Yeah.
it really just kind of opens your eyes and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that's really the big distinguishing factor there, is that it's just another tool in your toolbox to be able to use to produce art.
yeah, because the people who say, "Oh, digital is cheating," I mean, how is it cheating? You're doing everything the same way. Instead of using painted lead, you're just using pixels.
Yeah,
You still got to draw the damn thing.
yeah, you still have to know how to draw. You still have to know all your fundamentals.
Yeah, but anyway, I was getting off topic. Um, I was telling myself, why am I killing myself doing this when I could actually learn proper photography? Because I had a nice camera, and lens and everything. I just didn't use it the way a photographer uses it. I used exactly like a point and shoot, or like people use their cell phones.
Right.
Just took pictures, and I thought, well, why don't I just actually technically learn how to use a camera manually, like a DSLR camera, and teach myself to do proper flash photography. And if I do that, then I could still take pictures for reference to do paintings, except my pictures would be better if instead of spending a week on a painting and producing one thing, I could actually do a photo shoot with a model and do like 10 to 20 finished, fully professional, finished and retouched photos, and have more bang for my buck that way. So I finally taught myself how to use one, and it's a great stress reliever. Like back in the late '90s, early 2000s, I used weightlifting as a way to as my hobby away from art.
Yeah,
And then
I noticed too. That's
oh, I'm sorry. Go
another.
ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that's another common thing I notice a lot of artists are into. That I've seen is not only the martial arts, but also a lot of artists I know are into bodybuilding or lifting weights as well.
Oh, really? Because I don't know a lot.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few. I've seen quite a few. maybe it's not widespread, but I know of a lot of bodybuilders that are into drawing or painting and stuff. So
Yeah.
again, I think it's something that it's how our brains process things. Because I used to be really big into lifting weights as well.
Yeah, yeah. So, that was like my stress reliever. Photography also became my stress reliever. But then somehow over the years, I got paid for it, and I started booking gigs and building a portfolio that way. And so, yeah, it kind of became like a second, like, career. Nah, I wouldn't say career because it's not full time. I just do it when I can. But it became like a second way of bringing in income, and I actually had legitimate credits and have been published with photography too.
That's very cool.
But I mean, it was all just another way to get hot chicks, to
Yep.
get in,
Just a way to get dates, get some phone numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, right?
Right, right. At the very least, get scantily clad women to model for you.
Now you've done a couple of books on how to draw type of books. There's some of my favorite how to draw books that are out. Can you tell people a little bit about those? You did two. You did one about just kind of overall drawing techniques, and then you did another one that was specific to drawing women, right?
Right. They came out. I think the first one came out in 2008. I'm not sure. And then the second one, the one about women, came out in 2010. The first one was called Incredible Comics with Tom Nguyen, and the second one was Incredible Women with Tom Nguyen, or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was through Impact Books.
Yeah, Incredible Comic Book Women, I think
Right.
was the...
Right. And yeah, I mean, those came out, and I mean, that was a good thing for me, and it was the people who bought it loved it. I mean, I haven't had any complaints, at least not to my face.
Well,
about-
they never complain to your face. They'll probably complain.
Right.
They'll probably badmouth you online or something. But
Yeah, or in private. But, it was no, it was a fun thing. It's a nice thing to add to my resume, doing those instructional books, and of course, that gave me the official title of being an author. So I can say, photographer, author, artist. So it was good for me, and to this day, when I do comic book conventions, I still have fans. I mean, I just did one last week in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I had a fan bring up one of my books. Anyone who brings either of those books to me at my table at my appearances, they get a free sketch on the inside. And so that's
see.
always like my way of saying thank you and showing my appreciation for them picking up the book and their support. And it means a lot to me when people pick up that book.
So that's a pro tip for anybody listening, that you need to make sure you take the book with you if you go visit Tom at any one of his convention appearances.
Yeah. So, no, I'm glad you like it, though. I'm glad you enjoy. You have both of them?
Oh yeah, yeah. I have all of your stuff. I have your DVD.
Cool.
Yeah, it was great stuff. I really the way you teach and your style of instruction is very easy for me to follow, and you make it fun to learn the techniques, which I think is really important in any style of teaching. It needs to be fun in order for people to properly learn. So
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was doing my DVD and when I was doing the books, I think that was one of the things. The publisher contacted me prior to my first book deal because I had written a series of online articles on drawing, and she mentioned that she really liked the personality, like my way of teaching. It's kind of fun, and I don't try to do it. I think it just kind of comes out. I always look for fun ways to draw things or to teach things because, when I was doing it, I always thought that everyone always did it the same way and it was boring and repetitive. And I always wanted to stand out and just be goofy. And then the best way I feel to stand out for me is to always just kind of goof around and have fun with it.
Yeah, definitely, and it really sets you apart from everything else that's out there, you know. So
Trying.
I think that's important too. I mean, uh, you know, people ask me when they find out I'm into drawing and art. They'll ask me sometimes, well, any books you recommend, or how do you recommend I get started? And I always make sure to recommend your books to them, and so on that topic, I'm sure you get asked that a lot. Where should somebody start if they're wanting to get into drawing? And do you feel that anybody can learn to draw? Because I know some people look at it and go, "Oh, it's just not something I can do. I don't have the talent for it." Do you feel it's more something that if you practice enough and you study and you force yourself to draw, that anybody can learn how to draw?
Well, first of all, they could start with Art Samurai.
There you go.
Plug no. Um, that's a really good question because I get asked that all the time. And, I used to think very simply about it and say, well, people have talents and stuff. But over time, I'm really starting to think that maybe it's not so much talent, but it's just practice and repetition. Because I see people say, well, no, you have a talent. And the people who quickly brush it off, and it really hurts me when people who are really interested and want to learn, but they don't even want to start trying because they think, well, I just don't have it. I'm just
Yeah.
not enough, and they never even bother to try. And then they look at someone like a guy who's in the industry, a professional artist, or they look at my stuff and say, well, I can't do that. And then I think, well, why not? Because if you think about it, I started drawing when I was 3 or 4 years old, as long as I can remember. Now, is that talent? I don't know. I kind of sometimes think about, well, if you think about it, I've been practicing for 35 odd years,
Right.
essentially.
Right.
And these people who are not really willing to, or these people who are too intimidated to start, they really haven't tried. So we're going on 35 years, against someone who doesn't really have any experience in it. And of course, if you're going to make that unrealistic comparison to someone who's been doing it that long, of course you're going to be discouraged a little bit. And the reason why I started, I don't know, I don't think it's talent. The reason why I tell people I started was simply because my favorite cartoon at the time was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
Right.
It only aired once a week on Saturday mornings, when Saturday morning cartoons were like an event to kids.
Right.
And I didn't understand why I couldn't see my favorite character, Spider-Man, every single day whenever I wanted to. I didn't understand TV scheduling, why it was only shown once a week. So I did something about it. That was the thing. I actually did something about it. What did I do? I picked up a pen and I took the phone book right in front of me. I remember this. And I tried to draw Spider-Man out of my head, failing miserably. Another thing people don't understand, you know, you don't, no matter how talented you see a person at their craft, they weren't successful when they first started it. They were horrible, but they
Yeah.
got better. That's why there's something called practice. That's why I tell people drawing is like a sport. You practice something long enough, eventually, you swing the baseball bat long enough. Eventually, you're going to hit and connect a solid one. You're going to hit line drives and you're going to hit that home run, most likely. You throw a basket towards a hoop long enough and practice often enough, you're going to start to sink some shots. And I've always said that you you may not be like a Leonardo da Vinci right away, but with practice, anybody can get better at drawing. Because you're practicing, you just need a direction. You just need to learn how to see things a little bit differently than what you're accustomed to. And the other part too is you just need to train that mind muscle connection and memory, your fine motor skills, because that's the physical part, is to train your hand into guiding that pen or pencil to make the strokes that you want. People aren't they don't think about that. So when they try to make a stroke or they can't really form that mind muscle connection and it comes out wrong, then they give up right away. Well, when you're an innocent little 3-year-old or 4-year-old, you don't have those thoughts of giving up. It doesn't even enter your mind what failing is. You just keep doing it. And so that's what I say. I say I just had a lot more, longer practice than you have.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's important for people to realize that whether it's jujitsu, I've been a black belt in jiu-jitsu now for almost 10 years, or actually over 10 years now. So a black belt for a long time, and you've been a comic artist, professional comic book artist for a long time, but we still make mistakes all the time too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, see, the thing is, um, I've always felt, this again, going back to the, is it talent or is it not? It's you're training in art. I always thought a big part of it was that you're training your memory. And part of that training is just practice. You draw something often enough, sooner or later, you're not going to need to look at a picture to draw it correctly. You just kind of know how to draw it from your head because you've been training your memory so much. See, I think a lot of artists, the ones who can draw out of their head, comic book artists, what they possess is just a well-honed memory because they see and observe things and you just kind of add it to your mental library. And then when you need it, you just kind of pull it out and you visualize it. You kind of look at a blank piece of paper. This is how I explain it to people when they ask me, well, how do you do that? Well, I look at a blank piece of paper and I see the image in my head and then I project it onto the paper and I'm literally tracing what I see in my head onto the paper. That's the best way I can describe my process. And I've always felt that if you have a passion for it and you really want to do it, you can do it if you put in the time. Because, for instance, I like martial arts. I'm into MMA and stuff. I love Bruce Lee. Grew up with Bruce Lee movies. I even took Taekwondo for a year, and I did pretty well for the short time I was in it.
And you developed your own martial art.
Yeah, Nguyen Do.
Yep.
Which is now banned.
And
But
that was all like eye gouging and crotch grabbing and stuff, right?
Yeah, but only sexually. So, but I've always felt that, because of my interest in it, if I ever had the time and the motivation, I could still easily become a black belt. It's all mental, like you said. I mean, and I do think that if I wanted to, I can become a black belt. There's two things. One, I just don't have the time, or two, I just don't want it bad enough because I have to make other things a priority.
Right.
And I have to admit that to myself. But, I mean, shit, in the late 90s and early 2000s, I just decided, you know what, I'm gaining a lot of muscle and size and strength. I'm going to do a bodybuilding contest. And I told myself, you know what, I'm going to win a trophy. I'm going to qualify for nationals. I'm going to become a pro. I did qualify for nationals, but I never actually went to the national show. I told myself I was going to go back, take a year break, go back and become a pro that way. I never returned back to the stage because, comics got really busy and, over time your priorities kind of changed. But that was another example. I told myself, well, I think I want to win a bodybuilding show, and I did. So it's all mental.
Yeah, I think it's way more mental than people realize, and the having that belief and that drive and being willing to put in the hard work day in and day out. That's really, if there's any secret to it, that's the secret.
Right.
And the big pitfall that I see with really talented people that things come easily to, is a lot of times they're the ones that quit and don't continue, because as soon as things do start getting hard, they don't know how to deal with that because everything's always come so easily to them. So I always tell the talented guys that they have to work twice as hard as everybody else, is they're going to get that temptation to want to back out when things start getting tough for them. and it does happen eventually. No matter how talented you are gonna, whether it be in a competition, face someone so much better than you that it's a real test for you or whatever. So it's
Yeah.
important to understand, and it translates across to what you do, what I do, all different areas of life.
Right. Well, another way to look at it too is sometimes the more talented person, or if you want to get really technical as far as using the word talent, or the more skilled person starts to get, um, starts to get successful, and as a result, they start to become more comfortable.
Yeah, they
And
get they
once you get too comfortable and settled in where you're at, then the person kind of below you who is hungrier will work harder, and then you're going to get surprised, and they'll overcome you. So,
exactly, yeah, they get complacent.
yep, exactly.
What kind of what kind of I would say training, but what do you do to keep your art skills sharp? Do you look at anybody's work? Do you have artists that you admire and that you kind of use for motivation? And are you continually trying to improve your art even though you've been in it for so long? I think I know the answer to this. Is same as me. I'm training every day to continue to get better. Do you have a way that you do the same thing with art?
Um, I do. I'm not always consistent with it, but I try to be. I mean, first of all, there are artists that I do enjoy. I mean, obviously, Doug is a huge influence on me, and I mentioned this in another interview for an article. Is that of all the artists, at an impressionable age of 15 that I could have met, I really could not have met a better artist. Because he not only was he a great artist, but technically he was very sound, and he really knew how to like what blew me away was his knowledge of drawing anatomy.
Yeah, his anatomy is ridiculously good.
Yeah, I mean it's very accurate, but it's not to the point where it's so accurate that it stiffens his figures up and prevents his figures from being dynamic. I mean, he really
Right.
has that. He really has the visual language of comic drawing down, and his backgrounds. And he was the first guy that to tell me to work on my backgrounds and to put backgrounds in my drawings, because I didn't like to draw backgrounds. But so I could have wound up with being paired with a bad artist, because in professional comics, I mean, you have great artists, and then you have artists that maybe aren't so great. And I could have been paired with someone who taught me bad habits right off the bat, but I was fortunate enough to get Doug. So, I mean, he's always going to have a major impression on my artwork for the rest of my life. But, other artists I enjoy, I like the ones who draw really good women, the, cheesecake artists like Adam Hughes and Frank Cho, who I know. Frank's a really funny guy, by the way.
Yeah, he
And
is. I got a funny Frank Cho story. One time he was up at Emerald City Comic Con, and I went to his booth with my wife, and I was picking up a lot of his. I think it was volume 2, or I think I picked up like volume 1 and 2 of his women book or whatever, and.
mhm.
And he was there at the booth, but he had a sign that like said, Frank is going to be back in so many minutes. And so
Yeah.
he was banking on me not knowing it was him that was standing there, like not recognizing him.
Oh
and,
yeah.
and so when I got the books, he's like, yeah, he's like, that Frank Cho is such a filthy pervert and all that. He's like, that guy's a creep and all that stuff. It was funny. And I'm like,
Yeah.
dude,
He's.
I know it's you. Can you sign these? Yeah, it's too
Well,
funny.
no, I hadn't heard of him doing that before, so that's the first story of that type I've heard. That's
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, it was funny. It was.
But no, I'm
Oh,
sorry. Go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna mention like the other artists I enjoy. Like Art Adams. Really like his stuff. When I was growing up, it was like Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee,
Yep.
and I don't know. Just I like to look at other artists as far as um, like developing my skill. I try to like in the morning or the first thing, either the first thing in the morning, like over breakfast, and this is something I also preach, or to wind down. I'll do some figure studies. I have a collection of reference photos that I took of girls, or I'll find some interesting angles and poses of anatomy on like a bodybuilding website, and I'll just sketch it. I'll just do gesture sketches, and then I'll just like do interesting. I'll pick out interesting angles and lighting, stuff that isn't very typical. A lot of people when they start off trying to draw, they'll just draw very basic angles, like the straightforward angle or a punching fist angle, and that's it. But I try to challenge myself and push myself to draw really odd angles because I don't know when I'll need to draw them. So, work on my foreshortening, anatomy practice, of course, always. Just anything to build a drawing skill up. And going back to Doug, part of why his anatomy is so good and the way he draws it is so unique compared to a typical like house comic book style is because he's in the bodybuilding as well.
Right.
He's in the bodybuilding. He's in the Olympic lifting. He's a very successful competitive Olympic lifter. So I mean, he's into all that stuff, and just like us, he's into martial arts. He's a Bruce Lee fan. So it's kind of interesting how we have this common thread.
Yeah, very interesting. What kind of projects do you have coming up here in the near future?
Let's see. Well, I just got done doing some storyboard work for an MTV show called "Are You the One?" It's like a reality dating show, and last two seasons.
Wait. Reality, but there's storyboards involved.
Well, it's storyboard slash concept. I mean, we call it storyboards, but it's called concept art too.
Gotcha.
The thing is, basically, and I've been doing this the last two seasons for CBS's Big Brother.
Right.
I think I'll be back for this next season here. Basically, with these reality shows, many of them will do like competitions and challenges, and like the ones that like eliminate members every week until there's a winner. Well, they actually come up with ideas for these competitions during the season for the for the show, and the process is they think up of the ideas and then they contact someone like me to draw them out, so it's visual.
Very cool.
Then they take that drawing and then they present it to the execs, and then during meeting, and then the execs, they're trying to sell the competition to the executives for the team. So the executives basically say yes or no. So that's my job.
So that's really cool, and probably something that people don't realize how much visual representation is used in that process, even for something as simple as them doing a pitch like that to get something added to the show.
Yeah, and then on top of that, I've been doing. I've been hired by them to do on-screen work because a lot of my artwork has been featured on the show too. So it's always fun. TV credit, I always say, is really good. It's always good.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Good feather in my cap. But
Definitely.
let's see. So I just wrapped up doing an inking run on 8 issues for Barbed Wire for Dark Horse over penciler Pat Olive. And he and I go back to Catwoman on DC. So we went from Catwoman to Dark Horse. And he's great to work with. And I've been doing a shit ton of Marvel Legendary trading cards. They're gaming cards. It's like a deck building game. And they just call me up and they hire me to illustrate a bunch of their cards.
Yeah, I saw some of those. Those are looking really good.
Oh, thanks. Yes, and I'm doing another set here any week now. I'll be starting. I got 20 cards to do for the next gaming set here. And other than that, my most recent venture is doing this Kickstarter thing with Keith Champagne.
Yeah, let's talk about that. The Switch is the name of it, right?
Yeah, it's called The Switch. It's an original idea by Keith and myself. And basically, it's a graphic novel we're trying to push and to get out. And the reason why we went the Kickstarter route is because, um, long story short, we just want to do a really cool story with cool art and just get it out. It's hard to do that in comics because if you try to pitch it, there's a chance that the company might not care about it. They might not have interest in it, or if they do, then it has to go through a committee, and then you have opinions from editors and executives and what they want, and it kind of interferes with your creative vision, your original vision. So
Yeah.
let's just cut out the middleman and just get it straight to our readers and fans, and just do it. And we thought that Kickstarter is probably the most efficient way of doing it to help fund it and to get a proper. If we raise the funds to get a properly printed comic book that's just as professional as anything that you'll buy in a store, and with our names on it, and just get it out there and be proud of it. And that's what
Now,
we did. We launched a week and a half ago, and as of this recording, we are fully funded and then some,
wow,
which is
that's great, man.
a huge surprise. And we're still going to go for as much funding as we can because we want to hit some stretch goals, which will not only enable us to add to the graphic novel from 64 pages to 80 pages, but to make it look really nice. And if we hit the ultimate stretch goal, we'll make it a hardcover. And everyone who's backed us will get nice gifts in return. So it's everybody wins type thing.
Yeah, definitely. Where can people go if they go to Kickstarter.com? Can they just go on there and search for the Switch?
Yep, they can search for the
Perfect.
Switch, and it'll be just it'll pop right up. Or just if you're following either Keith or myself, I mean, we're always promoting it, pimping it every day.
Are you and Keith both collaborating on the artwork, or is he doing the story and you're providing the art?
He's doing the story, and I'm doing the most of the art. I say most because I think, um, I mean, if he has time and if I need it, he'll offer to do some coloring as well,
Right, right.
and then he might step in to do some inking if we fall way behind schedule. But for the most part, I'm doing most everything.
Very cool. And I remember a little while back that I heard you were starting to work on another book. Are you still working on that?
Yeah, I started on it. It's taking a back seat for now as we're trying to promote the Switch. But my intention is that while we're working on the Switch, I'm still chipping on Old Man Neighbor. Is that the one you're talking about, Old Man Neighbor, or are you talking
Well,
about the instructional?
the instructional one.
Oh,
I was gonna get to Old Man Neighbor. At the, I'm trying to get some of those images of him out of my brain. They're still scorched onto my retinas. But
perfect.
I was wondering about the instructional one that you were working on.
Yeah, I'm still working on that. I've got many irons in the fire.
Yeah, you're just like me. It seems like we continue to make more work for ourselves.
I think it's an ADD thing or something.
Must be something.
I always have so many different ideas, and I just need to sit down and just focus on one at a time and just get them out. But yeah, it's a reference book. It's a photo reference book of just beautiful naked models, and it's different from the other ones. Again, I always try to make myself stand out a little bit, and the difference between my figure reference book and the other ones is not only will mine have much more poses to work with than any other reference book. It's going to be huge. It's going to have so many different and many more angles and lighting than most reference books, but mine will have actual beautiful models, like models that like one of my models is Playboy, the other one is I mean, I have full-time models who they're just glam models, and they're just hot.
So you
I
found
don't want a reference book that has unattractive girls. I want the most gorgeous girls for my book, totally naked.
so
And
let me get this straight. You came up with another way to do a project that involved taking pictures of beautiful naked women.
yeah, that's like my calling in life. That's it. It's there are worse lives to have, and if things fall into place, then hey, why not?
There you go.
Might as well make the most of it and enjoy it.
No, but a lot of people don't realize how important having photographic reference is to learning how to draw figures. You know, when people are studying and trying to learn how to draw the human figure, having the really high quality photographic reference from different angles like you're talking about is incredibly important to that process. So
Yeah,
I
and the
think,
thing is, with me being, a photography background, a lot of the figure drawing books that I see, I mean, the photography isn't that great. And this book is hitting three markets. It's hitting photographers because it's going to have lighting diagrams. It's going to hit artists, obviously, because it's going to have diagrams of gesture sketches to get them started. So it's very much for the artists. And the third market is the guys, the horny dudes who just like to look at hot naked chicks. Because of
right.
course the big news in the last few months is Playboy is no longer doing nudes in their magazine.
Yeah, I saw that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's
Well,
stupid.
did they
See the anger in my voice when I say that?
did you cancel your subscription?
Internet, you don't need a subscription.
Oh, there you
That's
go.
probably why they fail. So that's
Where,
all.
yeah. Where can people go? Do you have your own website where people can keep track of what you're doing and what comic conventions you're going to be at and all of that?
Yeah, if you just go to my official website, it's tomnguyenstudio.com. On the landing page, if you just scroll down, it's all my appearances for this year, and it's updated as appearances get added. It gets constantly updated. I got to add another one actually, and I think I'm going to do a St. Louis show here in June. But my next shows are in March. As of this recording, will be in Lakeland, Florida. It's called the Fanboy Expo, and that's March, I think 12th, 13th that weekend, and then let's see, I think 2 weeks after that will be Jonesboro, Arkansas, and that's the Art Pop Comic Expo. That's the same weekend that Batman versus Superman's coming out.
Oh wow, yeah, that's coming up quick, isn't it?
Oh, I can't wait.
You looking forward to Batfleck?
I am. I when he was first announced, like most people, my reaction wasn't great, but the more I see, the more it's kind of winning me over, and I love the bat suit.
Yeah, I like how they did the suit. I'm not the biggest Ben Affleck fan, but I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt and go see it and not pass any judgment until I've seen the movie.
Right. I mean, everything I've seen in the trailers so far, I've been happy with.
Did you hear about the official runtime? It's gonna
Is that
be
over
gonna
two
be
hours or what?
it's gonna be over 2.5 hours long.
Oh my gosh, almost three.
Yep, I think it's gonna be like 2 hours 34 minutes or something like that.
Cool. I mean, as long as that's good, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, because they're kind of trying to introduce a lot of different things all in one movie. Because
Yeah.
they're wanting to build up all the Justice League stuff and kind of plant the seeds for that in this movie. So I think it's a great time as comic book and superhero fans to be alive right now because we got so many awesome superhero movies on the horizon this year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so weird, when we were kids. I mean, superhero movies like you can expect them to bomb or get laughed at.
Yeah, yeah. I remember. What was it? Was it 1989? Was that when the first the Michael Keaton Batman movie came out?
Yep.
See, that was like a game changer because it was kind of one of the first like superhero movies that was actually popular that people took seriously.
Oh, it was so awesome. I remember it so vividly. Like I wasn't able to go when it opened on that Friday, but I was able to go Sunday. My friend's mom took us to go, and I remember I was kind of annoying my friend in the theater because before the movie came out, I don't know if you remember, Topps came out with a bunch of trading cards from the movie.
Yeah, I do remember that.
I actually still have an unopened pack, and
Nice.
and if you remember, the card was like a scene from the movie, like actual pictures, like stills, and then on the
Right.
back of the card described that scene or had quotes from that scene. So I remember I collected all of them and I kind of pieced it together. So I had a good idea of what the story was and what people were going to say in the movie. So anytime that scene was about to come up or it came up in the theater, I'd whisper in my friend's ear and tell them what would happen next and what they would say. Like I thought I was like being cool
That's
because I
funny.
knew. And then he got really annoyed by it. He's
You
like, just shut up. I just want to watch.
you were giving him all the spoilers ahead of time.
Right. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to impress him that I knew what was going to happen.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's crazy how far things have come since then with the popularity of superheroes in our culture. It's really, I mean, for us as people that love it, it's so cool to see how far it's come.
Yeah, I'm not complaining at all. Especially now with production and the special effects. Now that they're up to task, and geez, I remember when. Do you remember the old JLA pilot, the Justice League pilot that never made it to TV, but there was a pilot floating around?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Oh, I rewatched parts of that like the other week, and it was just so bad and cheesy.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like I cringed watching it.
Well, I
We
think
weren't
it's
ready at the time.
no, no. And I think it's cool that now they're kind of, it seems like they're going a little more, they change things, but it seems like they're trying to stay a little more true to the source material of the comic books. Like they're realizing that they can put that on the screen and people love it, as opposed to trying to change a bunch of things like they would always do previously.
Yeah, I don't know. I will never understand that Hollywood mentality of just changing things for the sake of changing it. I mean, I don't know what's going on in their heads. Why can't they just stick? It's been proven over and over that if you stick to the source material, it will do well. And then they'll just find a way to change it just for the sake of changing it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, this has been awesome, man. Do you have anything you want to say in closing before we jump off here?
No, check out the Switch on Kickstarter. Read about it, and we hope you're interested in it. And check out the rewards. There's something for every reward level. So even if it's just $5, you're gonna get the entire comic, in PDF form. But we just want people to check out our work, and we just want to entertain.
Very cool. And do you have a Facebook page that people can follow?
Yeah, just type in my name, and it should pop up.
Perfect. And I'll have that all in the description as well for everybody, so they can get on there and check out your work and
Cool.
check out the Switch and go give you guys some more support. It's going to be an awesome project, and I can't wait to see it come out.
Oh, we can't wait to give it to you. It's what the stress is over because it is funded. Now everything is bonus on top of this. So, but it's gonna get made. It's gonna happen.
Awesome, brother. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to be on here with me tonight.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, James.
All right, my friend. Well, you take care, and look forward to having you on here again sometime in the near future.
I hope so too. You have a good night.
All right, you too, brother.
Yep. Bye bye.